Thank you so much, Bay Editora, for this great opportunity, so Professor Glaeser and Anna for nice presentations. And here we have a debate, and I'd like to invite some questions from you. So there's actually help here to, if you have questions, you can write down your question, and they will collect them and give it to me, right? And then we can discuss. Basically, let's try here to connect the two themes, which are related. So Professor Glaeser talked about how does this great work about urban economics, cities, how cities develop, etc. Anna talked about more about this economic and fiscal issue, this challenge to fund new things, new investments. And as it turns out, also with Bay Editora, we just a little bit of advertising. We edited a small book called Funding Urban Innovation. It was last year, right? And actually connects the two topics. And so before we receive some questions, I'd like to ask you some questions related to that, which is a major theme that we cover in that book. In the book, we actually cover three major aspects. One is regulation and policy affecting cities and attracting or not investment. Second one is this opportunity for public-private collaboration, attracting more private investment. The third one is the types of funding sources that we can attract, right? Those three topics. And I'd like to start asking Professor Glaeser about how do you see the emergence of a private participation? Because we're talking about the entrepreneurs, building new companies, etc. But how about entrepreneurs building infrastructure and bringing new ideas to modernize cities? Here in the city of São Paulo, we have a very large public-private partnership to modernize a part of downtown. Actually, the entrepreneur was here, the entrepreneur who proposed that. So we're not talking about simply, private participation to conduct some simple services such as cleaning, but actually private participation to help design the city and invest. What is your take on that, based on your experience?
So it would be nice to take the, or does my, I think Mike still should work. It would be nice to be able to just make the claim that, well, if we just have the private sector involved, it's all going to be great. The truth of the matter is that the history of private-public partnerships is deeply nuanced. And in fact, there are lots of examples in which what happens with private-public partnerships is essentially either the private sector figures out how to completely subvert the state and expropriate it, or the private sector gets expropriated by the state. So, in some sense, one of the great experts on this topic is Eduardo Engel of both Yale and the Universidad de Chile, and Eduardo has this great book on PPPs, which makes the point that Chilean PPP practice is relatively benign. I mean, most of them are relatively successful. The sub-Saharan African experience with them has been absolutely awful. Just absolutely awful in terms of being, recipes for corruption and subversion. U.S. history is replete with this as well. I mean, New York tried to handle its clean water problem 200 years ago with a public-private partnership, creating a water company that would, also be able to run a bank, and so would be subsidized by its banking activities. This company is still with us. Its name is J.P. Morgan Chase, which was the Chase Manhattan Bank, which was the bank of the Manhattan Water Company. A very successful banking entity, but not one that was very good at solving New York's water problems at all, because, of course, what did it do? It did a lot of banking and didn't provide a lot of water. It was a poorly designed PPP. In addition, for example, the private delivery of waste, in the private servicing of waste in the late 19th century was seen as being, completely ineffective, because they would be private contractors who would get money from the state, who would then kick back money to the city councilors and not clear any waste. This is not meaning to say that PPPs don't have a tremendous possibility, but they're not some unmitigated, easy win for everything. They need actually good management. And often the right way to think about it is in terms of how you deliver public services. You want to think about it there at least as being sort of four different models, one of which is public, completely part of the government, right? Completely subservient to the elected official. Secondly, public but independent. So this was a big favorite in the 19th century. The Erie Canal Commission, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. The big advantage of these is that they were thought to be independent of politics. And when they are good, they are very, very good, okay? Because you get someone like a Robert Moses, whose whole career is built on this, and who can, occasionally run roughshod over local rights, but by and large being very focused on delivering high quality. But when they're bad, you get a parastatal in a developing world thing that becomes completely inactive. And then there's fully private, meaning not subsidized. And when you could actually make that work, that tends to be pretty great because there's not much of a downside. But if that doesn't work, then you're in this world of controlled PPPs. And there, it's a possibility, but it doesn't eliminate the need for good government oversight.
Thank you so much. So, Ana, also in this book, economist José Roberto Afonso argued that, perhaps paradoxically, over the years here in Brazil, municipalities received a larger share of the revenues, of fiscal revenues, and yet they are suffering with fiscal problems, and they are having a hard time funding or finding new capital for investment. What is your take on this, and what is the solution? It has to do with our federation system, or do we need to better manage our local finances?
Problem. Okay. Well, just to make a point on the PPP point, I think in Goiás we tried. We tried many models of PPPs, and it didn't work. And especially because of the crisis, of course, because we don't have funding, and the state part of it we don't have fiscal space for getting money from not the central government or from a financial institution. But more than this, I think in Brazil we have still a lot to do in terms of the framework to be able to have the PPPs really working in Brazil. But going to your point, Sérgio, the municipalities or the cities, they are suffering something that it's even stronger and more complex than the states. Since the '88 constitutions, we had decentralization in terms of revenues, but also in terms of responsibilities. And what happened since then is that even though the revenues were decentralized and the responsibilities came to us, states and cities, these responsibilities, they started to become even higher and higher and more costly than they were in the past. And the revenues, they didn't come in the same path. So nowadays, not only the states, but even more, the cities, they suffer from a lot of costs of responsibilities with security, with health and education, and they don't have the revenues accordingly related to that or in the same proportion. The costs, they went up much higher and in a much more in a rate that was much more higher than the revenues. So I think it's not easy. It's easy to see that they received a big part of the revenues, but they also received the responsibilities. And the responsibilities now are much more costly than they were in the past.
Thank you. We have two questions here. So first, Professor Glaeser, how do you see the dichotomy between cities are becoming denser, and at the same time, people have this trend towards more natural way of living, organic food, raising food inside homes. Now it's fashionable to have, gardens on the top of your building and common areas, etc. How do you see this?
I don't see it as being a conflict. I mean, the desire to have green things in cities is entirely natural and entirely understandable, right? I mean, the fact that you like a park, the fact that you like having some greenery on the roof, that's a completely natural thing. And a wealthier and more educated planet's going to want more of that, and that's fine. We do have to draw the line at actually livestock in dense urban apartments. We really don't actually need pigs running around in the. But as long as it's greenery, that's good. And it's it's an attempt to sort of get both things. I mean, get the pleasures of having beautiful trees, beautiful greenery at the same time you're enjoying the fruits of being next to other human beings. And I think that's a trend that will continue. I think.
Thank you. Would you like to say something about this, Anna? So I guess for you too, actually there is this conflict between cities and municipalities. They tend to concentrate wealth, but on the other hand, in other parts of the country, then you have poorer areas. I do touch it on this topic, but I guess the question is more about is there a role for the government to kind of reduce this type of inequality and avoid concentration, or this should be pursued or not? I mean, avoid concentration in certain cities, all the economic activities, because it will end up attracting all skilled labor, while other regions will not become as developed. How do you see this kind of conflict?
I have one mantra on this that I've believed in for the last 20 years, which is we should help poor people, not poor places. We should focus on actually making sure we're reducing economy in the nation as a whole, not particularly making sure that any one area gets stuff just because it's from the one area. People are moving to a particular area because it's productive, because if it has opportunity. You shouldn't try to turn that off. What we should do, what we should worry about in terms of the areas that are left behind is, are the kids growing up there, do they have decent schools? Do they have decent opportunity for themselves? But there's no reason to try to artificially force people to live in one area, and certainly not to artificially stop the growth of other areas. In some sense, I think of the national government's position with localities as being somewhat similar to that with the national government's position with individual firms, right? You want to allow firms to compete, you want to create a good level playing field for all of them, and you want to get out of the way. The same thing is basically true about space, right? The right world is one in which you have a national government that sets up the rules, that has a basic system, and then let these areas compete. Make sure you have a person-based safety net. Make sure you help poor people. But if an area, is doing poorly, then you shouldn't try and artificially boost it.
Yes, I think I'm going to say to Ed that he needs to write not another chapter but another book, because I think management in all this, it's the main thing. Even going back to the question that you made before, because even if you have the revenues, if you have the responsibility and you have enough revenues for this responsibility, if you don't have management skills, it won't work. And we can see that in the country, we can see that in states, but mostly in cities where the problems are very close to the citizen. So you have to have management skills to be able to cope with those problems, and even the safety net. If you don't have a good management, you won't be able to put it in place.
I think this is absolutely right. And the only thing I can say in my own defense for why it doesn't play a larger role in my book is that I'm an academic economist, and actually running things is not something that I've done. But it's so clearly correct that in fact public capacity, managerial capacity, is incredibly important in getting things done. I think you see over and over again in this world mayors who are elected with bright promises, mayors who actually mean to fulfill those promises, right? They're absolutely, good-meaning people, and yet they find themselves completely unable to deliver. And sometimes it's about a lack of managerial capacity, but the truth of the matter is in some cities, even Jack Welch himself, were he made mayor of this place, would be unable to deal with just the level of institutional barriers towards getting anyone to do anything on this thing whatsoever.
And how to build this then? Is there any kind of way?
Well, my favorite story was given to me by the woman who runs Kampala in Africa, who I asked her, how in the world, Africa is notoriously difficult for unionized workers, getting anyone to work for city government. And I asked her, how is it that she got her city working? How is it she's famous for being one of the great city leaders of Africa? And she said, well, it was easy. First, all you do is you just fire everybody. First thing is fire everyone. And then you have to hire back one by one by one. And yes, there will be car bombs, but don't worry about that. You can survive the car bombs. You just have to get through the car bombs. I don't know how many people have as much courage as she did on, but this.
But you cannot, right, Anna?
I totally agree. Unfortunately, I can't do the same.
Other questions here. Actually, I had a question about regulation. So, Anna, you talked about the institutional environment more generally. How do you see this regulatory environment in Brazil for investment in cities or in general? I mean, I think there's a bit. And Professor Glaeser, I think even more specifically, what kind of construction regulations do you think are good or bad? Do zoning laws restrictions to skyscrapers, I mean, parking spaces, etc., make sense?
Concerning the investment, well, that's a very good point, because considering that we've been facing a huge fiscal crisis, subnationals as a whole, cities and states, they don't have money for public money for investments. Governments, they are not able to invest, and they won't be able to invest for the next maybe couple of 3 or 5 years, at least for the couple of years. So investment in cities and countries, they have to come from the private sector. Of course, we will have loans, but in levels that are very different from the ones that we had in the past. But I would say that the PPPs or every other kind of association between public and private sector, which much more balance on the private sector than the public sector, are the only way to have investments in cities and in states. In Brazil specifically, if you take out São Paulo, which is a huge city, Rio de Janeiro, but the majority of the cities, they depend on the state to be able to invest. The investments come, they happen only with the resources that come from the states through associations and partnerships. So when I see the situation of the fiscal situation of the states, it's really difficult to see how we are going to invest during the next 2 or 3 years before we have this fiscal situation settled, and in a country that is growing and revenues that are growing, and the treasuries, the local treasuries with money to invest.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Question for Professor Glaeser. It's about, actually, São Paulo is very big, as you know, right? I mean, the question is whether there's an optimal size of a city. Is there such a thing?
So I've always believed no. I think, in fact, there's a diversity of city needs, right? The diversity of different firms need cities of different sizes. Different people have toleration of cities of different sizes. There's not one right city size for everything. What is true is that both the upsides and the downsides of cities tend to get larger as city sizes increase. So Sao Paulo getting larger means, in some sense, more and more economic benefits, but it also means the congestion is even worse, right? And it means that there are other problems which also go up. So you have both the benefits and the costs going up over time, going up with city size. I think the right answer is that with good government, you reduce the costs of urban density. So essentially, if you had a government as effective and competent as Singapore's, right, I think you could basically tolerate almost any size of urbanity, right? You would have congestion pricing, you would have excellent public transportation, you'd have tall towers that were close enough to enable pedestrian contact, right? If you had enough wealth and competence, you could do almost anything. In places that are considerably less so, like my own country, the costs of density become much more severe.
Thank you. So Anna, actually you talked about this already, which is how to increase the efficiency of the state and actually fund new activities where new taxes are, the population in general is fed up with new taxes. Actually, proposals to raise taxes, etc. On the other hand, I mean, you can also have some opportunities at the city level to perhaps tax some things, including traffic or other aspects. I mean, do you think this could be a potential source of revenue, or taxing other types of things that create negative externalities or something?
Sérgio, I have a very radical position in terms of taxing, of increasing taxes, because I think that there's so much place for improving efficiency that we have to focus on that, on cutting costs and being more efficient. Every time that we raise taxes, it means that we have more room to raise costs as well. So I'm very radical, and from my experience, we have room for cutting in the central government level, in the state level, in cities level, in municipalities level. So I really don't think that raising taxes in Brazil, at least, is what we need now, because we really have to focus on efficiency and cutting costs, and we have places, we have room for that. If I thought that, well, we've done a lot, there's no place, no room, but it's not the case. In the three levels of government, I'm pretty confident that we have room for that. So it's not a good idea, in my opinion, to raise taxes, to increase taxes, because it would give us some relief that it's not very, it's not a good idea at this moment.
But surely there is a case for rethinking the structure of the taxes that you do.
For sure,
right?
for sure, certainly, because there is our tax system is crazy. It's completely crazy.
In which sense?
Well, just for example, in the U.S., it's not that I think we necessarily spend too much on transportation or too little on transportation, right? But the fact that we pay for it with general tax revenues raised from income taxes as opposed to with user fees or with property tax revenues is a big mistake, right? To the extent to which you have infrastructure, let me just give you a really clear example of something that it's infrastructure that serves rich people, much richer people than the US average, airports. Okay? There's absolutely no reason why airports in the US should be funded by general tax revenues. They should be funded by user fees on people who fly in and out of those airports. It's an issue not just, obviously, of social justice. It's also an issue of you want airports to be thinking about delivering services that attract customers. You want them to be actually responding to incentives in a sensible way, not sitting there lobbying Washington, asking for, oh, where's my handout under this program, where's my handout under that program, right? So moving to a funding mechanism that's more user-based, funded rather than general tax revenues makes sense. I think I'll give another example, which is even more obvious, is that Chinese local governments are funded largely, to a significant degree, by a combination of transfers from the central government and by land sales. Land sales, meaning you take land from some pot that somebody else is occupying, then you sell it and you get money from it. This is a very strange way to fund local government relative to just using an annual property tax. Right? So they also have a property tax that's based on the transaction level, which is also a very odd thing relative to just having an annual property tax. Even better than an annual property tax, because that deters construction of real estate, is to just have an annual land tax, as Henry George argued 150 years ago, that you just have a tax that is based on an assessment of the value of the land, and that's how the local government raises their revenue. So I think switching from sort of counterproductive taxes to productive taxes, I think there's plenty of range to do that in both the US and Brazil.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Affordable housing. I mean, it's now many people are talking about this. Is this a solution? How to fund it? I mean, is there any role for subsidies or something along those lines? So,
let me share with you the experience that we have in Goiás of a social housing program. And now the federal government is going to launch something similar. In Goiás, we have, I don't know how to say it in English, crédito otorgado, which is it's uma isenção tributária. It's something that someone, a tax yes, but let me try to explain the program in English. Actually, a poor person comes to the state and we give them a check that he can go to a store of material de construção.
Right, got it, I got it. Materials, construction materials.
Yes, okay. Construction material. And he pays with that. With that check, the store can have a rebate in its taxes, the taxes that it has to pay to the state. So first of all, works very well because it goes directly to the person that is going to use it. Second, it's something that it has a very high priority in the budget because it's something that this revenue doesn't even come to my cash flow. It doesn't come to the treasury because it's just a deduction. So it has a very high priority because it comes even before all other costs that the state has to do, and the value is very low. So you can give it to a very low class, but it's very spread. And we can see nowadays, if you travel in the interior of Goiás, you see how much this program improved the conditions of the housing of those low-income people. So it works very well. And now the central government is going to launch something very, very similar.
It's an interesting program. I mean, it'd be great to see something that was a good thing for any researchers here to actually figure out how to evaluate the treatment effect of this thing. It'd be nice to see. You know, one of the things I worry about affordable housing programs is that real affordability means that anyone can walk into a city and find an apartment to rent or buy that is not egregiously expensive. Real affordability does not mean that there's a small set of people who happen to have gotten lucky enough to get affordable apartments. And I worry that the focus on affordable units takes the pinch off politicians for actually promoting real affordability. So my own hometown in Massachusetts, maybe 5 years ago, had a newspaper headline celebrating, all the local politicians were there, celebrating the creation of 2 affordable housing units. 2 units. Okay, this was seen as being some huge triumph for them. They had provided 2 units, right? Demented, right? This is not any kind of solution for real affordability, and yet by creating the separate class, you create this way out, right? Ultimately, the goal has to be policies that are dedicated towards making things more affordable for everyone. I think there's no way to get around the fact that needs new supply. Again, you know, probably the best way is to rethink the regulations that bind supply, but other things that are engaged like this sounds like also creative ways on the edges to try and make sure there's more supply being brought to market.
We have a final question here. It's more political in a sense that sometimes mayors do good things for the city, and the population doesn't really recognize our policies that are sound economically, but particular groups will oppose them. I mean, so the political cycle and this political force tends to be a problem or not. I mean, how do you see this and how to overcome this?
That's a good question. Let me think what to say about that.
I'll just say a few things. I mean, there are a couple of different ways of thinking about this, right? One of which is that what's politically possible changes over time. Right. So to take a very clear example, when Milton Friedman started talking about charter schools, essentially, competition among schools in the 1960s, he was seen as being a madman who was completely outside the stream of everything. He kept on talking about it for 35 years, and by the time he was done, America had a totally robust charter school movement. So in some sense, it's the job of us who are not in the business of getting elected to say things that we think are right in the hope of possibly changing things. Secondly, you know, a lot of it depends upon the actual skills of the politician. So, and actually, you know, it's worth a lot to have a politician who's able to convince the voters that what he's doing is for them. So I watched 2 mayors in New York and Boston both try to do things which I believe 100% were dedicated for the good of the citizenry, right? One of which, because he was clearly a man of the people, because he spoke in the people's accent, Tom Menino of Boston, right? He could build a shiny innovation district on the waterfront, and nobody doubted that Tom was doing that for the city, right? Nobody doubted that, like, he was speaking for them, he was one of them, and, you know, he wasn't doing it because he had any friends in the computer industry. Everybody knew he didn't have any friends in the computer industry. He didn't know how a computer worked, for goodness sakes, right? It wasn't going to be for them. Whereas Mike Bloomberg, right, even though he was motivated, I believe, by exactly the same desire to help poor New Yorkers, and did a lot of things for them, the moment you get on your private jet to Bermuda, right, all that is gone, right? The population immediately thinks that you're not doing it for them. So the communication style, the credibility of the politician is hugely important in this, and it's not clear that we as economists can actually, you know, help them on this, but it's really, 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 really important. And then The other thing, I guess, when giving advice is just to recognize the political realities. And I tried to make a point on this, which earlier about congestion pricing, which is I, as an economist, will argue for congestion pricing always and everywhere, just as a matter of principle. In reality, that has no chance of happening, right? So what you do need to be focused on, this is part of what the behavioral economics world makes possible, is thinking about what things can work. So this thing that economists talk about in terms of the endowment effect, that people are really uncomfortable having stuff taken away from them, this goes for free driving on particular lanes. They hate having to pay a charge for something that was a lane free yesterday. Now if it's charged, it doesn't work. Right? So you've got to give up on that. But we do see that when you have new highways, people, they never saw that highway before. They're not used to it being free. You put a charge on it now, you can get away with it. There isn't going to be bloodshed in the street over that. So, pushing towards solutions that are both better economically and politically palatable is the other part of our job. But
oh, actually, I agree with you, and I would just add that I think the political cycle it can be a problem. I'm living that we have elections for cities, for municipalities now at the end of the year, and I can tell you that I've been having a hard time since the beginning of this month because many things have to happen during June until the end of June because of the elections. And you see that the populism is still there. So people, the mayors, they want to be reelected and they want to make things that will permit them to make them being reelected, and they're not thinking so much about what is the best thing to do, but sometimes I think, well, I'll have 4 more years to do what is good to do, but I have to be reelected. So I think the political cycle can be a problem, but more and more people are more aware of what they want. And I think in the city is quite different from the state, because what we do, it's much more far away from the citizen. And I hear from the mayors that come to Goiânia, to my place, and they say, well, everybody knows me, Secretaria, so I have to do the right thing, because they go to my house. And they go there and say, well, you're not doing the right thing. So I think in the city, of course, not in big cities as São Paulo, but in small cities, you have the citizen much more close, and they want the good thing to be done. And that makes a difference, despite the political cycle.
I just want to add one final, because I agree with this so strongly, that when you see city governments that work, and there are plenty of them that really do. I mean, there are a lot of mayors who are in city governments that are really exciting. Not always, but some of them do. But there are typically about 3 major things that come together. The first of which is that they have been trusted with enough capacity. And I think one thing I want to highlight on that is this sense, which you never go wrong underestimating, just the mayor doesn't have any time left. Right? This is why I was against the Olympics for Boston. Was if Boston had gotten the Olympics, it would mean that for the next 10 years, the mayor would have no time for anything other than the Olympics. There would not be a school that improved. There would not be a traffic pattern that would be fixed, because it would be entirely focused on the Olympics for the next 10 years, because there just isn't capacity. But when you do have cities that work, the citizens have actually trusted them to have enough time, to have enough people who work for them, right? And we often see in dysfunctional cities, for example, think about Rome, where it's not just how many people you have working for you, it's how many people actually do what you want them to do, right? So a year ago, Ignacio Marino, 90% of his traffic cops did not show up on New Year's Eve, right? They called in sick, and there was nothing he could do to them. He could not fire them, he could not promote them, he had no power, he had no capacity whatsoever to push his employees. And that need for capacity is really central. The second thing is the competition that works between cities. In some sense, the difference between cities in the 1960s and cities in the 1990s was a clear realization that they don't own anything, that they actually need to be nimble, that they need to be better, that they need to compete for both people and businesses. And that role of cities, that thing, is really crucial. And I think that is one of the good things that comes out of a more globalized world, is even if Sao Paulo reigns supreme over Brazil, it does not reign supreme on a global market. Right? And it's still fighting for talent on a global market. And your talented young people may very well think that London looks awfully good relative to a Sao Paulo traffic jam, and that's something very much to think about going forward. But the third thing I just want to emphasize is limited responsibility. When cities work well, it's because the mayor has not been entrusted to fight every social, ill. right? When cities work well, they have to deal with very specific range of things and can be judged on those things. The more that you end up spending time over, well, why aren't you fixing world peace? Why aren't you fixing everything that's going on? The harder it is to actually get focused on delivering actually social services. And I'll just end by telling one anecdote about two very famous American mayors, John Lindsay, who was a liberal Republican and a great orator and a symbol in the 60s, big enemy of the Vietnam War, and Richard J. Daley, the father of the last Richard Daley, who was a famous sort of, in the dirt, in the muck urban politician. And they're at some big event, and Mayor Lindsay is giving a passionate speech against the Vietnam War, passionate speech against it. And he sits down amid tumultuous applause, and Daley leans over to him and says, you know your job is to take out the trash, don't you? Right? And that's exactly the point, right? That taking out the trash is sort of central, and it's good, and it's honorable, and there's no Republican or Democratic way to do it. And when you have city services defined well, you actually have a hope to having city governments that deliver on the hopes of their citizens.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, at Glaeser, Ana Carla, Costa, and you all. Thanks, Bay Arq.Futuro for this event. It's an honor for INSPIR to have you here. Such a high quality event. I would like to invite you all to a book signing session with Professor Glaeser. Now it's be here. You can buy the book and have his. Yeah, but thank you so much.
It was fun. Thank you for doing this. I thought your speech was great.